Hello and welcome to Chris & Co, the show looking at what affects business in Kent, with me, Chris Price. Joining me this week are Rick Schofield, a tax partner at accountancy firm Wilkins Kennedy, and Alison Parmar, Development Manager at the Federation of Small Businesses in Kent. We're looking at the hot topic of tax for the self-employed and some of the other announcements affecting companies from the spring budget. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, Philip Hammond, has faced a barrage of criticism after announcing that national insurance payments will increase from 9% to 10% next year for the self-employed and then again to 11% in 2019. For what was supposed to be a boring budget from spreadsheet Phil, there was actually a lot to take in, as Katie May reports.
This is the 2015 Conservative Manifesto, but last week in Philip Hammond's spring budget it was revealed they'd be breaking one of their promises. The self-employed will see their national insurance payments rise from 9% to 10% this year. This will further increase to 11% in 2019. However, this will only affect some businesses. I went to Kent Business School in Medway to talk about what impact this will have.
What's more important to mention here is the effect on the consumer. So there is definitely an effect on the consumers because the traders are going to be transferring this increase to the consumers through increased prices or through increased invoicing.
But it wasn't all bad in the budget. Many pubs will be getting a £1,000 discount on business rates, and people are raising a glass to that. Small businesses set to lose their rate relief will see increases capped at £50 a month, and local councils will have a £300 million fund for discretionary relief.
The picture is a bit hazy here. We see on the one hand there is the economic condition as it stands and the economy as a whole. We see that employability rates are increasing and the prospects are on the positive side to continue to increase. We have not seen the mentioning or the possible effects of Brexit into this budget.
Katie May Nelson for KMTV.
So, Rick, did the Chancellor get it wrong then by deciding to increase national insurance for the self-employed?
When he first started talking about the self-employed, I actually thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was. The actual increase isn't that big. For the worst case, it's about £500 per person. That's not the problem. The principle is that they promised not to do it, and they have done it. Now, if you're self-employed, there are lots of other advantages. It's still much better from a tax perspective to be self-employed than be an employee. Unfortunately, that's encouraged an awful lot of people to become self-employed when actually they're not taking the risks of genuinely being self-employed. They know where their income's coming from. They're not having to go out and get new work all the time, which is what being self-employed is about.
So they might just have one boss, for example, be in a business for a contract for a year or two.
Yes.
That's pretty safe. That
it's
is
fairly
very
safe.
much like being an employee.
But the tax benefits are great, not just reduced rates of national insurance, but all the things you can deduct against it, which if you're an employee, you can't. So I was actually a bit surprised he hasn't hammered perhaps the status of people rather than the rate, because that wouldn't have broken a promise. He promised not to increase the rate, not to have a go at people's status.
That sounds fair. I mean, the Chancellor said, people who are self-employed, they have access to the NHS, to public libraries. I don't know. The same things that are paid into by national people. Shouldn't they be paying a fairer contribution? And if they're not, in fact, entrepreneurially minded, is that not an unreasonable thing to have done?
FSB completely agrees. Yes, you've got to pay taxes. Of course, you've got to play fair and by the rules. This isn't playing fair. And they did mention, we're going to bring it in line with employees of the bigger companies. This doesn't. And we produced a list last Friday showing that actually, if you're setting up on your own, yes, it can be brilliant fun. You can really tap into your own specific talents. But straight off the bat, we found about 37 challenges of being a self-employed person. And so that's where it's not an equal playing field. Yeah, we know we all need the NHS system, we all need that backup of public transport, that kind of infrastructure. Yes, but actually, if you're truly self-employed and having to find your client week in, week out, month in, month out, You don't have sick pay if you're sick or a family member's sick. You don't get holiday pay. You have to arrange all of that as part of your own package. What about getting a mortgage if you've been self-employed for a few months? That's going to be really tricky. And that's where we're talking about the level playing field. It's not there at all. The government's got to do way more before it's level.
Do you think that actually Philip Hammond's background is as an entrepreneur, not necessarily entirely as a politician? Do you think that actually he perhaps sees a kind of mismatch with some self-employed, perhaps who many self-employed people are actually very, very well off, might have an astute accountant. I don't know if that's politically correct to say that. But do you think perhaps he was trying to tackle a public perception that maybe isn't necessarily true?
I think there is a bit of that. But I think where he's getting pressure is probably from the Treasury and the Revenue, because they are aware there are so many so-called self-employed people who aren't. The Revenue doesn't have the resources to go and check people's status.
I think it's a tax grab. It's a quick way of getting some money in for the Treasury. And they realise now there's more self-employed people, 4.8 million, something like that, the last count, more than ever before. They want to get that tax as quickly and as effectively as they can from that amount of people. But it's not the way to go about it. It can't.
So this is the Chancellor scrambling for money, was it?
It's a quick win. There's so many budget cuts. It's an easy win for them.
He went on very much. We've got to increase social care spending. We've got to increase spending on the NHS. Where's he going to get it from?
It has to go somewhere. I mean, he announced $2 billion over the next 3 years for social care, which undoubtedly is probably one of the big social, the greatest social issue, arguably, of the upcoming generation. We're going to have a huge amount more people who are not going to be unable to work because they are reaching retirement age. And somehow the government is going to have to pay for the increased liabilities of social care. The $2 billion was, I think it was described as a sticking plaster by Baroness Altman, the former pensions minister. So are we being too harsh on the Chancellor? I don't know.
No. No, I don't think we are. How about turning the attention to the bigger multinational businesses? That's something that our members will say it's not a level playing field. Talk to Google, talk to Starbucks, talk to those great big names that know very well about shifting money around. So actually they're paying less. This is a quick tax grab. We know that there's millions of self-employed people, but it's not a level playing field. They don't get compassionate leave, they don't get carers leave. All of these kind of things that as an employee, your employer, your company and your boss will have that all set up and behind you. As a self-employed person, whether it's a tradesperson or professional services, you haven't got that information, that resources. Perhaps you're not thinking about that because you're thinking about where you're going to get your client from. So it might be a small amount overall over a year, but actually if someone's got to find their next client every other day, you're thinking about where your leads are coming in. It's just another headache, and it's stopping that, it's crushing that entrepreneurial spirit actually, and it could push people to do that. Right, well, where can I dodge it? Where can I tax avoid? Where can I find other ways of not paying it?
People don't tax avoid, do they? They don't tax avoid. The Chancellor also hit the self-employed with a cut on the tax-free dividend allowance, which was reduced from, which is going to be reduced from 5,000 to 2,000.
Found a lot more surprising. It's only been there for 12 months. They announced it and cancelled it. They announced it at 5,000, then brought it down to 2,000 a year later. That's not long-term strategic tax thinking. That's, to be honest, a bit of a panic. So.
And does he have fair reason to panic? Because obviously he's looking at the impending Brexit negotiations. There was a lot of discussion about trying to put some money aside for in case things go south. But I mean, we can see there's some graphs here that we've got from the Office for Budget Responsibility, the first on GDP growth, the second on net borrowing. So this graph here, you can see that GDP, although it was revised up for the next year, the growth was actually revised down for 2018, 2019 and 2020 compared to the autumn statement. In this other graph you can see here, net public sector borrowing predictions, while improved in the near term, they stay essentially the same after 2019, 2020. So I guess the question is this the look of an economy which is putting money aside in the event of troubles ahead for the Brexit negotiations? Has he got a lot to worry about? Is the scramble understandable?
To be honest, I don't think he has an awful lot to play with, and I think that's the problem. We don't know how much he's going to need to play with. He's being prudent, but he is desperately trying to get from wherever he can that little bit extra to put away.
The thing we look at is levels of confidence and how that's projecting forward. So pre-June 23rd, our confidence levels amongst small businesses was really low because the future was so uncertain. And all that planning ahead, do I hire staff? Do I get a new building? Do I recruit more? You can't plan ahead if you're not sure what's going to happen. So the Brexit negotiations is going to create, there is that underlying fear of uncertainty. Now, lots of small businesses, they might be planning 6 months, 12 months in advance, and they know where they're going to go. With all of this Brexit, not entirely sure what that means, that will put a hindrance, and it'll make businesses falter a little bit in their planning ahead and that grabbing.
It just causes a bit of hesitation.
Yeah.
I mean, from our business, we've not changed what we do. We're just going to carry on doing what we're doing, but we're just a little bit more nervous about things, a little bit more hesitant. I think that's the way a lot of people are thinking.
Yeah.
There were some positive announcements for business, particularly perhaps on small, on business rates.
Yes.
So there was some sort of evidence of perhaps backtracking on some of the big rises that some businesses are going to see. So businesses that lose their small business rate relief won't see it increase by more than £50 in the first year. And also there was that announcement for pubs as well, £1,000 of discounted business rates. Do you think that they are measures which are useful, go far enough?
We were pleased with the announcement. We were pleased that Philip Hammond actually mentioned the FSB in the lobbying work, because pre-budget, the backlash, not the backlash, but the massive amount of concern amongst so many of our members, and we joined together with lots of other business organisations and we spoke to the Chancellor and said this is going to have a really massive impact, not only on the high streets but on a whole range of different businesses. So the transitional rate reliefs and certain things that they've done to soften that blow, yes, that's very welcome. Fundamentally, the business rate system is broke and it needs fixing. It just doesn't work for our economy, it doesn't work for the 21st century, it doesn't work for the digital. Trading and businesses, there's so much about it.
Do you think that it works, Rick?
No, it doesn't. I mean, if you look at the retail space, I mean, retail rates have gone up ridiculously. That's part of the problem. What we're seeing is office space actually hasn't gone up too much. Retail has gone up hugely, but they're competing head on with the digital space, which quite often doesn't pay any at all.
And even within the retail space, it is such an unfair bias. It's almost based on the bricks and mortar and not at all about what that business is. We've got businesses who are phoning up, they're very concerned. One, for example, is sort of a badminton and trampoline park. Can you imagine the amount of space in that is absolutely massive? And they're charged the same amount of business rates as Tesco's or multinational supermarkets just down the road on the same industrial estate. How can that be fair? How can that encourage businesses to set up, employ local people, support the local community, where they've got to pay the same massive amount of rent?
So it's a topic we could talk about for ages, quite clearly, but unfortunately we do have to move on, where we're looking again at the topic of apprenticeships. Last month, the KM Group launched the Kickstart Kent campaign, aimed at improving standards and ensuring higher numbers of young people finish the courses once they've started. Kent County Council has responded by launching an initiative of its own. Its Made in Kent campaign aims to double the number of apprentices starting courses by 2020, with many large firms looking at how they can hire people to the roles with the introduction of the new apprenticeship levy from April. I headed along to the initiative's launch event in Faversham to find out why apprenticeships are such a big priority for local government and business. Spelling out the message, Made in Kent. These young people, seen parading the streets of Faversham, opted to start their career on an apprenticeship in the county. The giant letters outline the name of a new campaign by Kent County Council, which wants to double the number of people starting apprenticeships to help solve the skills crisis affecting many industries. Why is the government and Kent County Council so keen to make apprenticeships such a crucial factor?
Well, you go around the county, you go around the country, and all businesses are moaning about the fact that they can't get the workforce skills they need to support and grow their business. This allows all businesses to grow their own workforce and develop their own workforce.
The great and good gathered at the Shepherdneme Brewery in Faversham to hear about new changes coming into force from April. Businesses with a pay bill of more than £3 million will have to pay an apprenticeship levy to fund future careers. But firms can get hold of the cash paid to the government if they use it to hire apprentices. And big businesses are beginning to support the change.
It's a cracking opportunity, I think, for people to look at their businesses, look at their skill sets, look at their strategy and say, where do we need to take our homegrown talent in the future? So certainly my eyes have been open to the opportunities, and I think other employers should be too.
These apprentices said their training had changed their lives.
Having been told I was supposed to go straight to college, sixth form and on to university, seeing my other friends who've done that, I'm kind of glad I didn't. Not for the fact that they have qualifications and whatnot, but the fact that I've been able to gain a qualification while working, getting actual practical skills, getting paid, with the option to go on further to get even more qualifications without any sort of university debt.
Not everyone is sold on apprenticeships though, especially these students at the University of Kent.
I think they're good if you really know what you want to do, but for me, I didn't know at the time, so I thought, do uni, figure it out while I study.
Having a degree allows me to go into different fields that maybe I wouldn't be able to get with an apprenticeship.
Kent County Council said more than 11,000 young people started apprenticeships in the county, excluding Medway, last year. They have their work cut out for them to meet their ambitious target over the next few years. So, Alison, why is there this obsession then from local government, business on the route of getting people to start apprenticeships?
Apprenticeships, obsession, that's a good word. There's certainly an ongoing focus and an ongoing drive. We know from the small business perspective, it's a great way to grow your business. Equally, because there's pretty much full employment, it's really hard to find and recruit the right staff. So this is a really good little bridging gap whereby you get the young students out of university or college, not university clearly, out of school or college, and into your small business where you can really get them to grow in exactly the topic areas and to suit your business entirely. So an ongoing obsession perhaps, it certainly works.
You've had a couple of apprentices, I think, in your firm. Have you found having them within the business?
We might just have been very lucky. The apprentices we've had have been very good, and they've all gone on and stayed after the apprenticeship and have got professional qualifications. Is it luck? Is it training? I don't know, but it is a good route for a lot of people who are not wanting to go to university.
Yeah,
it gives them a good structure.
Where do you think that we need these apprenticeships most? Where are we? Presumably this is businesses crying out for a shortage in skills to be filled by apprenticeships, and are there areas where your members perhaps come to you and say, you know, we're struggling to find the right people with the right skills and apprenticeships are a useful route? Yeah,
there's a company I can think of at the moment. They're looking for actually accountancy and sales skills. So it's nothing untoward or really out of the ordinary, actually. It could be pretty just professional services, retail, that kind of industry, where it works really well. We've got about a quarter of our members employ an apprentice already, and we know that a quarter are thinking about the possibility of it. So it really does work. I think it can work across the board, and when you get that right person, it is brilliant, and the evidence shows they do stay on much longer than their actual apprenticeship qualification, so it's great for the business in that sense.
But from a small business perspective, often one of the gripes is it's difficult to get through the red tape, etc. And I wonder if you think that there has been any movement on the ease of being able to get hold of a good apprentice. Is the system of hiring an apprentice small business friendly?
Things could always be quicker and easier, couldn't they? And that's something that we lobby on at a national level to get that streamlining that process as much as possible. FSB recommends straight away to try the Kent County Council route, actually, because that's some good free impartial advice right there. Or using the National Apprenticeship Service. So, it can be time consuming, but equally you've got to get the right person for your business, so you've got to invest the time in that.
It's important to invest the time to get the right person. At any job, it's important to invest the time to get the right person.
Are we the focus of the KCC campaign, Made in Kent campaign, is to get more people starting apprenticeships, but are we missing something? Should we be focusing more on making sure people are finishing? You know, that it's all very well getting people to start, but unless they're finishing the courses, it's not right. And is there a gap there briefly?
Perhaps we should just be celebrating those who finish to actually sort of myth bust that. They do get through the process.
They do get through the process.
They do get their qualifications at the end. Maybe we need to hear some more good news stories about the people that complete, because it does happen. I think it's a message that we've got to keep getting through to the businesses as they change and grow, new businesses come up. This is a really viable recruitment option.
That's great. Thank you both very much for your time today. Unfortunately, that's it for the latest edition of Chris & Co, our show looking at the issues affecting business in Kent. You can keep up to date with all the county's latest business news at kentbusiness.co.uk, and you can follow us on Twitter at KentBusiness and join our pages on Facebook and LinkedIn. But that's it. Thanks very much for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.